We are here today with Honigman's Coffee with Counsel, coffee or I guess whatever beverage of choice you'd like to use. Today, we have the real estate department within Honigman for your podcast today. We are going to talk about the current state of office leasing in Chicago. My name is Larry Woodard. I am a partner in the real estate group at Honigman LLP. With me is my co-moderator, Penelope Campbell, who is a self-described lease lover. She loves leases, which is more than I can say for myself. And we're very happy today to have a very esteemed member of the Chicago real estate community. Kyle Kamen is a vice chairman at CBRE. He's probably been on every 40 under 40 list that you could think of. And for my money, he did one of the most transformative deals in Chicago. If you've heard of if you build it, they will come. The field of dreams. If you bring Google to Fulton Market, they will come. And Kyle was responsible for bringing Google to Fulton Market, one of the more transformative deals in Chicago area. Before we get started, of course, we're attorneys. We got to say our legal disclaimer. So if you pause for 4 seconds, this podcast will be not deemed to be legal advice. Shouldn't rely upon legal advice. We're not going to create any attorney-client relationship with any listener in Honigman LLP. Glad we got that out of the way. So I'm going to hand it over to my co-moderator, Penelope, who's going to give a more detailed background of Kyle.
Thanks so much, Larry. Kyle, we're so excited to have you. I'm just going to mention a couple of other exciting things about Kyle. So in 2012, Kyle represented Motorola Mobility in their HQ relocation from Chicago's suburbs to the Merchandise Mart, which Chicago's then Mayor Rahm Emanuel called a game changer. He's also represented Glassdoor and a number of other tenants in developing Fulton Market and bringing more tenants to Fulton Market and making it what it is today. So while a lot of Kyle's clients are Chicago specific, he's represented them all over the world. And I think that that's going to be really critical to today's discussion because he's seeing markets in Asia and other places that are looking at what a post-COVID world looks like and have had more experience with pandemics, those markets. And he knows sort of what a post-pandemic and as to those markets, what a post-COVID world looks like more than a lot of other brokers who focus just on Chicago or just on the US. So he has a great multinational focus that he can bring to this discussion today. Again, Kyle, we're so excited to have you. Larry,
well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're
thrilled
very
to be
excited.
With you guys.
So talking about our post-COVID world, Kyle, as we get back to work, what industries do you see that are more willing to go back to work? What industries are you seeing that are taking their time? How is it the same across the board?
What I would say is I'm not seeing that there are specific industries that are more anxious to get back into the office than others. However, across various industries, you have certainly some groups that are very anxious to come back and plan on returning to the office in the exact same fashion in a post-COVID world as they did pre-COVID, while others, perhaps in that same industry, are much more cautious or are looking at much more progressive workplace strategies as they think about a return to the office. What I can say is that there's no question that as my clients have surveyed their employees about their employees' willingness or excitement to come back to the office over the last year, that sentiment is clearly moving in the direction of returning to the office in a similar fashion as to what we saw pre-COVID. Very early on in COVID, so a year ago, last April, last May, what we were hearing from most of our clients is that a large majority of their employees looked at the future and thought that they would prefer to continue to work from home, maybe all of the time, or at least a large majority of the time. What we're seeing now is far fewer employees who are thinking about working from home on a full-time basis, and that most employees are really excited about a return to the office.
Great. So for those who are going back, are they looking at specific areas of the city as they start to think about how they're going to make that return to the office? And for areas of the city that folks are looking at less, what's your forecast for those areas?
Sure, that's a great question. What we're seeing is that that companies don't necessarily have, when they're thinking about the future of their office space in a city like Chicago, they don't necessarily have a prejudice as they are analyzing the various opportunities and the various submarkets. However, what many companies are settling on is the fact that in a return to the office scenario, what is going to drive excitement in a return to the office are neighborhoods and office buildings that provide both an incredible amenity base. And so, life with restaurants, culture, hotels, gyms, cafes, all of the things that in a pre COVID world, companies looked for, but also with a keen focus on health and wellness. And so, on a going forward basis, it's really going to become table stakes for office buildings to provide state of the art HVAC systems, touchless technologies, outdoor spaces. Of course, then coupled with all of the amenities, not just in building amenities, but neighborhood amenities that represent, truly live, work, play opportunities, not just within a few block radius of an office building, but really rich neighborhood amenities. And so, what many companies are now settling on is that the neighborhoods, the locations that provide the buildings that have the attributes that, again, companies are looking for in a post COVID world when we talk about state of the art infrastructure, HVAC, outdoor spaces, and the like. The majority of that new construction that can accommodate those types of needs now are in the West Loop and in Fulton Market. We haven't seen much office development in the central business district, in the center of the loop over the past few decades. And those older buildings simply don't maintain the infrastructure that that tenants are looking for, again, in a post-COVID world. And so the real winners on a going forward basis from a submarket perspective clearly are the markets where we've seen lots of new construction. And we've also seen businesses continue to do somewhat well during COVID. And the submarket that really represents those things the best and maintain those attributes is Fulton Market. And I'm somewhat nervous about the future of the central business district, the older assets, again, that don't have those modern amenities and infrastructure that tenants are going to, or that tenants are finding are so critical in a post-COVID world.
So expanding on that, Kyle,
Yeah.
what do you see as, every tenant's wish list, other than, of course, an airlock and complimentary, hazmat suits? What are the bullet points that every tenant is starting to look for in as we, re-enter this post-COVID world?
Sure. It's state-of-the-art HVAC systems, how much fresh air is getting in and out of the space and how quickly. Um, Touchless technologies. No one wants to touch elevator buttons anymore. No one wants to take a key to the restroom any longer. Park. There's more emphasis, even in a city like Chicago with great public transportation. There's more of an emphasis on parking, either in building parking or nearby parking, because at least in the near term, most employers think that their employees are more likely to drive. Again, over the next couple of years, outdoor spaces have become much more important. And it's not just outdoor spaces that can be utilized in our warmer months, but many are rethinking, how do we take outdoor spaces and really make them usable 365 days a year, as meeting spaces, as conference space, as lounge space. Again, uh, outdoor space is going to be at a real premium going forward. And then the other things that are really important are all of the other amenities, right? So how do you compel an employee who has become really accustomed and really likes working from home? How do you make the office space and the office building, how do you make them the preferable destination? If your employee has the choice to come to work or to stay at home, how do you create an environment such that the employee chooses to come to work? Certainly, employees will choose to come to work to be with their colleagues, to be with their team members. The social element of coming to the office is really important. And so, does the office building, does the neighborhood, does the office space really um, allow for people to come together and socialize? If the building doesn't allow for great collaboration opportunities, then again, employees are more likely to stay home if given the choice. So it's really uh, again, amenities that enhance opportunities to collaborate, and then also infrastructure that give employees the peace of mind that they are in a safe place.
So Kyle, let me ask you a quick question about as a follow-up to that. Um, you know, the Central Business District has a lot of some newer buildings, but that's where you're going to see more of the Class B and C buildings
Right.
than in a place like Fulton Market. Um, what's the future for those? And specifically with respect to that question, I agree, and I hear just you know in the course of talking to folks that people are looking for more outdoor space. Is it cost prohibitive to retrofit those with sufficient HVAC systems that people will be satisfied with them? And how do you get outdoor space? Are people looking at adding, building rooftops that weren't there before? Are people looking at building plazas that have more interactive spaces that have Wi-Fi where people can work outside? Because those buildings, the windows don't open. There's sort of
Yeah.
nowhere to go.
Yeah.
How are those buildings gonna address these things, if at all?
Sure.
Yeah.
And
It's a
if
I
great
they're
got a,
not,
question.
if they're
Yep.
not going to be able to address them, then what? What's the
yeah.
future?
I got a Class C building. What am I supposed to do? Yeah.
Right.
Right. So landlords of those assets are looking at every setback in their building. They're studying their rooftops to determine whether or not there are opportunities to create outdoor spaces. That's one. Two, it's very difficult to in an occupied building redo the type of infrastructure improvements that tenants are going to be looking for. Right? The new elevator system with touchless technologies, state of the art HVAC systems, it's really challenging. And so, unfortunately, some of these buildings are going to have to go through a re-tenanting, and I think there will be a period of time where many of these buildings go through some challenging times. Many of them potentially will go back to lenders, will trade, and some of them again are going to have to purge tenants before they're going to be able to be repositioned. Um, and is there a future with many of these buildings as viable office buildings? Absolutely. Will they all continue to be office buildings? Is the highest and best use for every Class C office building in the CBD to be a commercial office building in the future? Probably not. And so, again, as many of them lose office tenants, I think many of them will be repositioned as student housing, apartments, hopefully hotels. And we've seen some of that. We've actually seen a lot of that over time in the CBD. However, I think that trend is going to accelerate significantly post COVID, especially as not only do we realize that over time, tenants are going to have these challenges with these buildings, but there actually have been many of our largest employers have made commitments, not just during COVID, but pre-COVID, to move from the central business district to new construction alternatives, whether they be along the river or in Fulton Market or in River North. And so I think when many return to the CBD, what they'll find is many of those very large employers are no longer there. Um, I also think that landlords in those areas are just going to have to recognize that their assets are more challenged, and many are going to have to just simply compete on an economic basis. They're going to have to reduce their rents significantly in order to attract tenants. And there will be an audience of tenants who are attracted to those buildings purely based on economics, because what we're going to see in Chicago, I think, is a real bifurcation in the post-COVID, post-vaccine winners in the market and the post-vaccine, post-COVID losers in the market. In Chicago, historically, the pricing delta between trophy assets and C-class assets has been about 2x. And so the very top of the market is about twice as expensive as the very bottom of the market. Maybe in some cases it's 2.5 times or 3 times. But in a market like New York, you'll see the top of the market is as much as 5 or 6 times more expensive than the bottom of the market. And I think you'll see that pricing discrepancy going forward in Chicago. I think you'll see that many companies are willing to pay a significant premium to be in new assets, trophy assets. And maybe they'll look at employing more progressive workplace strategies to reduce their footprints, reduce their size of their spaces, such that they can be in those newer, nicer assets. But I do think that many will choose to pay that premium. But of course, there will be others, given the fact that the B minus and C class buildings will be so much less expensive, who might choose to go that route and invest maybe some of their own money to create unique office experiences in those older buildings.
Great.
Okay. All right. This is an admittedly broad question, but where do you see the market in the next 5 years? You mentioned that there's going to be this delta between the A spaces, the new construction, and the B and C spaces. Given everything that we know, given the uniqueness of the situation that we have to deal with COVID and this essential arms race for COVID preparation, dust off, pull out your crystal ball if you could, dust it off and tell us where you see things in 5 years.
Sure. So I think that there is going to be a continued, gravitation and pull west and north in the market across the river. So I see, Fulton Market continuing to grow, and I see River North continuing to grow, and then maybe, further north into areas like Goose Island and perhaps Lincoln Yards, maybe south into, neighborhoods like the new 78, and other areas like that. But I think that Fulton Market and River North will be the real winners going forward. I think we'll see lots of new construction because, again, I think demand for new assets, with state-of-the-art infrastructure, and all of the things that I mentioned before that tenants will demand over the next 5 years, I think will drive new construction. And then, as we hit on earlier, I think that the bottom of the market, or much of the bottom of the market, is going to have to be repositioned, for other uses. But that's where I see it. I think many probably think that new construction will go on hold for a period of time. But I think all you have to do is look at all of the cranes in the air, and as you dig deeper, you'll see that projects in Fulton Market, maybe they're smaller projects, maybe instead of 500,000 or 600,000 square foot buildings, or 1.5 million square foot buildings along the river, maybe there will be more projects that get launched, that are 80,000 square feet to 250,000 square feet. But what we have seen over even during these very challenging times is that in markets like River North and Fulton, developers have still been able to get financing to develop on a speculative basis newer projects. And I think they have, because many are betting that there will continue to be demand for those types of assets.
Kyle, before we wrap up, let me follow up on that really quickly. The smaller projects and what you were saying about taking space in Fulton Market and having less of a footprint. Is that because more and more companies that weren't traditionally open to it are looking at hoteling concepts and sort of a rotational workforce basis? Is that how that's working, or?
That's exactly how it's working. I mean, I think for many recognize that they have to improve the workplace experience for their employees to retain and attract top talent. And so many may look at, as we see the pricing delta between the top of the market and the bottom of the market, many may feel that the best way to proceed with their real estate strategy is to move into a brand new state-of-the-art building, and develop a more progressive workplace strategy to shrink their footprint so that there isn't a significant increase in their real estate costs. And then, of course, the practical application is that if a company realizes that it can operate effectively with an agile workforce, so with employees who can work from anywhere at any time, those companies will recognize this opportunity to implement a workplace strategy. You can call it hoteling, you can call it free address, you can call it agility. But we'll implement those types of strategies. But again, they do it with a keen focus on improving the workplace experience for their employees.
That's
Well,
great.
thank you, Kyle. That is fantastic advice. We appreciate your time. For everyone
it was
out,
fun. Thank you for
Really
having me.
interesting. Thanks so
Yeah.
much, Kyle.
Yeah.
This is a great topic, and we're very grateful to have you.
That's right. For everyone out there, mark your calendars from 5 years from today, and we'll see if Kyle was correct in his in his eyes. So for more information on our law firm, this is Honigman, www.honigman.com. Hopefully everyone is officing in the very high-tech, state-of-the-art buildings that Kyle has described. And until then, for Penelope Campbell, this is Larry Woodard, hoping everyone have a safe, happy, and healthy day. Take care.
Thanks so much.